Hello and welcome to another edition of the eCommerce Odyssey podcast. I'm here with Stephen Jones from Veeqo, who are a leading e-commerce platform, helping thousands of sellers to sell across multiple platforms. Steve is here to have a chat about his system and how it can help sellers. So, Steve, can you give us a bit of a brief background on Veeqo, please? How long has it been around?
Yeah, of course. Hi, Trevor. Yeah, no, excited to get started. I was listening to the last episode with Steve from Muddy Trowel, and yeah, glad to be on here.
Distinguished company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. So a background on Veeqo, of course. Veeqo was founded in 2013, so it's a relatively new company. It's founded by a Welsh entrepreneur called Matt Warren. So Matt used to run a business called Duro Watches, which is like an online luxury watch retailer, the first one in the UK. And when he sold that business, he used the money that he raised to start Veeqo.
Mm-hmm.
So since then, we're backed financially by Tom Singh, the founder of New Look. We raised a Series A about a year and a half ago for about $4 million US, and that was led by Octopus Ventures, like a big venture capital firm in London. They manage, I think, about $10 billion worldwide, so they've got a lot of investments, and they chose to back us. Since then it's kind of grown from strength to strength. We've got about 100 team members and 4 global offices. So we're headquartered in Swansea.
So outside London, outside where the office space is cheaper.
Yeah, well, we've got an office hub in London, one in Kyrgyzstan, and one in Toronto, so that we've got a team all over the world to do.
Have you been out to Kyrgyzstan?
I haven't been to Bishkek. No, I've been to Texas. We did start out like a small, like a WeWork collaborative workspace, like a shared workspace in Austin, Texas, about a year ago, and that was a really cool experience. But
cool. So tell me, how do you feel that? I'm interested to hear how you think Veeqo fits in with in the marketplace. So what kind of merchants do you look to recruit?
Yeah, so we help around 650 businesses at the moment, and they kind of vary. We know who we're not good for a lot of the time, but we've got 2 kind of personas that we really help. So the first one we call internally the trench scaler. So they're someone who is in the trenches. They are an owner operator of a small e-commerce business. They're just starting to fulfill things at scale. Their business is just growing to they're not selling multi-channel for the first time. Like, they've been doing it a little bit, but they're processing between 500 and 5,000 orders per month, say.
Okay.
Turnover is, or revenue, sorry, is like $500,000, $1 million a year, that kind of ballpark. So they're really starting to get an idea of what operating at scale looks like, but they're struggling. They're making mistakes. They want reliable operations, and that's what they're aspiring.
So they're beginning to feel the pain of basically of fulfilling lots of orders.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, e-commerce is tough, isn't it? Like, you've got
it certainly is.
You've got so much to deal with. From sales channels and marketplaces, and then you've got shipping carriers on the other end, and accounting packages and stock and shipping. There's a lot to deal with, and they're starting to really feel that pain. So that's the first person that just bringing it all into one place just simplifies their life. But one person I spoke to recently in the US who started using Veeqo, she said she didn't have to hire an extra person, and she was able to get her evenings back, basically.
Yeah. I certainly think with these kind of these kind of systems that they are. I mean, depending on how you look at them, they're really several £100s a month they sell for generally. But I mean, the amount of time you save is just phenomenal, and just the accuracy with which you can do things.
Yeah,
you couldn't do previously.
I think a lot of merchants would be able to relate to that as well. She was sitting in front of her TV in the evenings with her evening meal, and she'd have a barcode scanner at the side of her, and she'd be scanning packages and trying to work out how much stock she had of everything. And it was all day. It didn't. It was all day, every day. So we help those people simplify it, and then the second type of people we help, we call internally the smart switcher. So there's someone who has been doing this for a bit. It's probably an e-commerce manager at this point, sometimes an owner still, but usually you've got an e-commerce department, and That's someone who's looking for automation and they're looking for efficiency and they're fed up of their existing solution. And they're typically more than 5,000 orders a month, 5, 10, 15, 20,000 orders a month. And their revenue is then 5, 6, 10 million a year, something like that.
When I first started doing e-commerce about 12 years ago, there was a few platforms. There was Channel Advisor, there was Follow, there's a few other ones. Now there seem to be an endless number of platforms available. I'm surprised lots of them haven't gone bust. What is it that makes Veeqo stand out? Why have you? I mean, it seems to me there's a few kind of leaving the peloton, a few kind of leaving the pack. What is it, do you think, that you guys are doing better than other people?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's very competitive marketplace. There's been a lot of like movement in the space this year as well. A lot of like acquisitions and stuff, and big companies coming in and buying companies like Veeqo, big huge accounting platforms coming in and buying us. So yeah, there's a lot of competition to deal with. I think where Veeqo really differentiate ourselves is typically in the shipping and fulfillment area of it. So the actual warehousing. So if you're looking for really efficient warehouse processing, then Veeqo is typically where you would come, as opposed to some of the competitors for the handheld mobile devices, which are ours, which we support. So that's pretty key difference. Yeah, aside from that, it's the kind of intuitive nature of setting up Veeqo. So people are able to head to the Veeqo website, sign up for a free trial, and set themselves up. It's not a 4-week or a 12-week or a 6-month or a 12-month implementation time.
Right. Is it like a 30-day? You pay? Is it like 30-day terms?
It's a 14-day free trial that you sign up for, and there's no commitment on that. You just sign up, get your 14 days for free. You can connect your own sales channels, connect your own shipping carriers, and it's all very straightforward. And what we're really investing in and trying to put our time into is having the product teach you how to use it. Mm-hmm. So as you go through the product, it'll flag little things to do with what you should be doing next and how you.
Because these, I mean, I always feel quite sorry for companies like you guys, right? Because I think, well, it's basically right. It's a complicated problem. You've got lots of different channels. You've got lots of different channels you integrate with. You've got undoubtedly some of your customers are not that tech savvy, and you yourselves are integrating with systems which are far from perfect. So it must just be a constant race of trying to, what do they call it, the Red Queen race, where you're just constantly running very fast and standing still while trying to improve your product at the same time. It must be very hard.
Yeah, there's a lot of development. I think what we've really had to do over the last, well, since I've been at Veeqo for sure, so the last kind of 2.5 years or so, has been really focused on what we're good at. There's a massive temptation because there's so much opportunity, because businesses can be so, as you've mentioned, so varied, so broad. They can do so many different things. There's a lot of temptation there to like go and play in this area and go somewhere slightly different to where your core is. And what we've really had to do is refocus on what it is that makes Veeqo good, what we're good at, and not try to be just another tool that offers that thing or that thing.
So do you consider yourselves to be like an all-in-one system?
No, it's something that I personally feel quite strongly about, actually, because I think it's a bit of a cop out. It's a bit of an easy out for a salesperson to call it all in one, because there's so many things we don't do. So we're not an accounting platform. We're not a QuickBooks or a Xero, for example. We're not going to take care of reconciling all of your accounts for you.
Well kept away from that.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a complicated beast.
Yeah, it's not a point of sale solution. So if you have a physical store, we'd work with a partner like Shopify's point of sale system or Vend or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's not a help desk. So if you're a customer service team and you're looking to handle loads of customer tickets, you'd be using something like Gorgeous instead, or eDesk, or one of those help desk solutions. So we're quite focused on what it is that makes us good.
So what do you call yourself? Because I always struggle to know. Is it an e-commerce platform? Is it a total commerce platform? Is it what? How would you sell yourselves?
Well, inventory management system is a pretty good starting point.
It's a very boring thing to say, though. I don't think that really covers it, though, does it? With these, did you?
No, it doesn't. No. Shipping, warehousing. Yeah, it's e-commerce fulfillment, really. So it's everything to do with your finished goods that you need to distribute wherever they need to go. That's what Veeqo's aspiring to handle is your e-commerce fulfillment operations.
So how do you, obviously, so you've got lots of different customers. How do you actually balance the requirements of different customers and decide where where you develop it? So I'll give you an example. I mean, I always feel with these platforms, they tend to be quite good at their kind of core things. So in the terms of the platform, other platforms I've used, they tend to be really good at, say, for example, the listing bit, but they tend to be less good at, say, reporting or these kind of nice to have kind of things. So how do you know what to develop next?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, really good question. It's a really difficult part of developing a software like this for sure. Yeah, I think that the main theory behind what we do is that we want to develop the best thing for the most people. So out of our customer base, this next feature that we're assessing, should we add this little bit to it? How many merchants is it going to help, and how important is it to their operations? So we used to offer a listing tool, as you've described. We used to list to various channels, but what we found is that we were kind of trying to keep on par with what was available in the market and slightly lagging behind. And actually, it was quite a poor listing tool. So what we've done is we've deprecated it. We've removed it from the system. It's not really, you can't use it anymore because it was poor. So we'd rather partner with someone that's good at that instead of you having to make do and then cobble together these awful solutions and deal with the errors that come from them. So yeah, we focused.
It's a thankless job. It is.
Yeah.
It's a thankless job.
Yeah.
Because I find that, I mean, I think you're right. I think that there's a lot of systems out there that do the listing and struggle with the listing, but don't do the back end, don't do the warehousing, don't do the reporting very well. And it's something I find. I mean, my experience with systems is, you take on a new system, and there's a bit of it that you find it helps you, pushes you forward in some ways, and pulls you back in others. So, other systems we've used, I mean, we very quickly got onto the platforms that they supported, but then we never got onto the platforms they didn't support because it's just so hard to do.
Yeah.
And we never, because the reordering functionality wasn't there, we found reordering very difficult, and they didn't really integrate with other things. So yeah, it must be. I don't know. I don't even know how you do it. It must be difficult. I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah, it makes sense. There are always little kind of extra bits. So wholesale is a good example. Like, we work with a lot of omnichannel brands. They've got a couple of physical stores. They sell on 3 or 4 different online channels, and people that sell in that way will often have a little bit of wholesale as well. So it's hard. There is wholesale within Veeqo to invoice wholesale customers and stuff, but it's hard to know how much attention to put on it. With like bugs, for example, the general rule is that there are some things that people just need Veeqo to be able to do. So print and shipping labels, for example.
Yes.
If there's a bug that says you can't print Royal Mail, Amazon shipping, DHL, whatever it is, you can't print those shipping labels, that needs to be prioritized immediately, because that's just the core of what Veeqo should be churning out day to day. And then there are some things which are more ancillary, like wholesale, for example, which is then, it's a lower priority. It just has to be.
So what do you see? Okay, so you obviously get to see a lot of e-commerce merchants. What do you think the more, what do you think the most successful ones do in this ecosystem where everyone's competing against Amazon? Everyone, it's a classic all against all kind of war. What do you see in the merchants that are actually breaking out from the pack?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Amazon enters an interest. Yeah, I think Amazon set the standard, don't they, really? It's something that we all have to deal with in the way that they prioritize their end customer and how they put that end customer first.
Well, it's easy to make money if you're Amazon, if you're giving away other people's money. But don't get me started.
We'll
don't get me started.
Moving along quickly on that one. But yeah, they set the standard for things like fulfillment. The area that I work in specifically, e-commerce fulfillment, they really are the pinnacle. So the way they've got there is by relentlessly prioritizing customer experience, and I genuinely believe that's what the best brands are doing. The brands that come to us who are selling 10 million a year online and have 5 or 6 physical stores and are doing objectively very well for a small business based in the UK, making their products in the UK, they relentlessly prioritize the customer experience. That's what they really care about. Is what is my customer experience at the end of the day? What reviews am I getting? what feedback am I getting from my customers, and everything else that they do follows on from that. So
Do you think also, I mean, other things? I mean, is it that are people who, are develop, are these people who have their own brands? Is it something that is it how important is, say, white labeling or getting your own products made as opposed to being a reseller?
Yeah, we definitely work with both. We work with brands and resellers, retailers, people who purchase and sell as purchased, and we've seen success in both. Right there are people that will sell Nike and Adidas and whatever else as a part of their store, and then there are people who sell only their own products. And I suppose that's more about who you are as a person than anything else. I think both of them can be successful and both of them can fail miserably. I don't think there's a right or a wrong, and often businesses will do a mix of both.
What about marketplaces versus websites?
Marketplaces and websites.
As in, people, do you how important do you think it is for people that, because you obviously get kind of FBA brands that just sell on Amazon. How important do you think it is to be like a omnichannel brand that sells everywhere, or to some, is it okay just to sell on marketplaces or okay to just sell on the website?
Yeah, obviously I think both are okay.
Don't be too reasonable. Come on, have an opinion.
Most people would aspire to have their own client base. The business I worked for before Veeqo, I used to work at an aromatherapy brand with about 25 million revenue. We sold across 15, 20 different channels and marketplaces. And the constant battle that we had is that 80% of our revenue came from Amazon.
Nice.
So we didn't feel like they were our customers. We felt like they were Amazon's customers.
They're not your customers.
Sell to. Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't matter how much branding you put on the bottle or whatever it is, it's still an Amazon customer. So people would always aspire to have access to their own base of customers that they can market to, and people whose attention they have in their own social media platform or whatever it is, however you're keeping these people's attention. So I think that's obviously the goal, and the margins are there ultimately. You don't have to pay the Amazon marketplace fees or FBA pack and dispatch fees, long-term storage. Like you're able to set up your own thing. You're in control. You get to decide what products you sell.
What do you think about people having their own stores then? I mean, have you got successful, because in a kind of the area I'm in, there's like a hierarchy. There's, it starts off at the top. You've got the multiples, the John Lewis's of the world, and then down from that, you've got people who've got like I say, omnichannel sellers, got a store, and they've got a website, and then you've got website sellers, and then you've got marketplace sellers, and then you've got people who just have a Facebook page and think that makes them a retailer.
Yeah.
Do you see that? I mean, obviously shops are something out of fashion, but I mean, do you think that shops are going to make a comeback? Do you think that, or is it just e-commerce all the way?
Yeah, I think in terms of like a hierarchy, I think it's highly complicated, isn't it? Like, do you do any B2B trade? Do you do any wholesale and things like that? How does that affect your margin? I think at the end of the day, the profit that you're left with is what should be the concern. That's the sanity part of it. The revenue is just your own little kind of fluffing up your ego. If you're not making any money on it, then that's.
It is very. I know it's very easy. It's very easy to be busy in e-commerce, and much harder to make any money.
Absolutely, yeah. I obviously would personally rather be running a brand selling £1 million worth of stuff a year with a 15% EBITDA than have 10 million revenue and no money at the end of it. So I think that I don't have like a hierarchy like that in my head, but I definitely. Well, I think that's a part of. I'd be curious to hear your opinion as well, Trevor, on what you think the trends are at the moment in e-commerce and what your predictions are for the pandemic has really shaken things up, hasn't it? It's been a big catalyst for change, and I think we've seen a lot of really, really big brands, really huge high street chains crumble and be unwilling to adapt or unable to adapt to the kind of digital first world that we find ourselves in.
I think that we together have created a beast, and I mean, like, every time, because I mean, we had a store. My Hello Baby had a store, and it was a storefront, and what would happen is that people would come in and they would showroom and then they would leave, and it takes a lot of time up. But then what happens is that happens a few times. You close down your store, and you don't reopen it, and then there's nowhere that you can go and look at these things.
Yeah.
So together as a community, we had this thing where we want to go and look at things, and we can't do it anymore. I mean, I think that you go into shops and they definitely have their place. And I think if you can make it work alongside the other things, I think it's a really good idea. I mean, it's more difficult, and I think that it has, from my own very limited point of view, it had real staffing problems. Because my e-commerce store will run at the weekend, and we come in and we pack the stuff on Monday, and we have done nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas if I wanted to have a store, I'd have to hire 2 people all the time to go and sit in it.
Absolutely.
And so I think that we're going to, I think basically the rent on shops is too high, and the leases are too long. And that meant that people like Topshop couldn't get out quickly when they needed to, fundamentally. And so I think that there's no reason why shops can be successful. I think that the issue is to do with how much the value of the real estate on the high street has gone down.
Yeah, and that's kind of nail on the head for me, to be honest. I think we're going to see bigger brands going online and competing more for the online real estate. And I think some of them are going to fail. Some of them are going to outright not understand how to provide an excellent online experience in the way they've previously provided an excellent in-store experience. And as they all go more and more online and more people work remotely, surely the commercial real estate in city centres and high streets, the rates are going to come down, rents are going to be, maybe even government incentivizing people to be renting these commercial properties.
All I can tell you is in St Albans, a not particularly big store at the wrong end of St Albans was 10 grand a month, right? And you just have to kind of think, well, okay, it's 10 grand a month, and then the rates on top of that is going to be 2-3 grand a month, and then you've got to think about so it's 100 grand a year, and then you've got to think about how many people am I going to have to get in the store every day to make £1 million a year, and you think, wait a minute, that's quite a lot.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And that's a cheap store at the wrong end of St Albans High Street. And then you look at these others in a really busy spot, they'd be like several multiples of that. I mean, it's just too much, really. You
absolutely can't. That's not feasible. And I think what we'll see is a mix of both. I'd like to think we'll see what it costs to run a store on a high street. We'll see that come down as people move out of city centres a little bit more and work more remotely. And I think what we'll also see is small businesses being armed with intelligent tools and being able to make more out of their store, having a good point of sale system, and being able to do things like shipping from store, for example, using a store as a distribution center and making the most out of your inventory. And suddenly it becomes, your storefront no longer becomes what you've described, where you've got, this is what my costs are to run this store, and this is how much physical sales I make every day. It becomes like a brand outlet. As more and more people get online, it's so easy to sell online now. It's so easy to, as you say, I literally yesterday bought a reusable kitchen sponge, and I had a targeted advert to me on Facebook. They clearly know I buy this kind of crap. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, this looks really cool.
Well, I'd like to see what your Facebook
absolutely
targets you as the kind of sucker that buys a reusable kitchen sponge.
Well, they know I buy rubbish. Clearly, they know me very well, obviously. But so I clicked on it, and it was like 18 quid or something. And I said, oh, that looks a bit steep. And I typed it into Amazon, and exactly the same thing with a different brand name was half the price. And it was obviously like a drop shipper or something was targeting ads, and they just set this up. So I think it's so easy to sell online that you're going to have to differentiate yourself. And the way you differentiate yourself is by building that credibility, that trust, that customer experience. That once they buy from you once, you've got a repeat customer because you're providing them with an excellent experience. And having a storefront is a part of that. Like, if you're
that's what I meant by my Trevor's hierarchy of stores. Yeah. It's just like a so I tell you what I think is going to happen. I think that in the long run, there's going to be no one having stuff in stores, right? So what's going to happen is brands are going to have to start paying retailers to hold their stuff in stores, because I mean, take what I mind, what I know about is prams, and I know that prams see themselves as luxury items, and they want to have their stuff showing in a certain number of places around the country where people can go and see it. And currently what happens is they basically will, retailers will have to buy that stock. But I think as it becomes less and less attractive to have stores, they're going to have to pay the retailer to have this thing on show. I think and they're going to have to effectively, it's smaller, because that's effectively what happens in retail, in department stores. You have concessions within department stores. I think you start to have that within smaller stores as well, and that that way showrooming then becomes a viable, less of a problem, because you're getting paid to display this thing.
Yeah, definitely. Wholesaling into retail, or B2B to C through physical stores is its own complex beast, isn't there? There's consignments and concessions and all kinds of crazy things you can do to try and make it viable. I think my dream for it, and what I think will happen, is that we'll see more brands having their own stores, and the price. I'd like to see the rates come down low enough, and the intelligent tools be provided enough to allow a small independent e-commerce seller based in Swansea, selling £1 million a year online, be able to have their small Swansea shop where they sell direct to the public. Because if you can have a warehouse / if you can have a shop, you can have the other one. If you've got this physical location, that should be available to the public. And if you've got a public-facing location, that should be available online. The stock that you have in there doesn't need to be earmarked. It doesn't need to be ring-fenced away from your online stock, where you've got your own separate warehouse in an industrial estate somewhere. That's not an efficient way to use your inventory. So I think that's going to be what we see, is that, and those things are available today, right?
There's some
selling 50 grand a year online. You can get a tool that would allow you to sell from a physical store.
It is. I mean, from experience, it is very time consuming to run a website. And it's time, the ordering, the descriptions, the maintenance of the listings is very time consuming. I can see why people don't do it, because it's not. And the costs as well. I mean, you still have to pay rates, you still have to pay all these things, and returns, etc. It's lovely. So what do you think is going to happen with Amazon? I mean, do you think that they are going to get kiboshed by, is regulation going to catch up with them?
It is interesting, isn't it? It does seem like they're getting to a size where splitting them up into other little Amazons makes a little bit of sense. But I think what the pandemic has really shown is how far ahead they really were in terms of e-commerce and their operations, and what they know they're good at, and the way their fulfillment network is building in the UK as Amazon shipping and stuff starts to really gather steam.
It is. I mean, they are amazing. I mean, that is undeniable. I think that they are. They get there by dumping on their third-party sellers. Don't get me started. I wonder how long they're going to be able to do that for. I mean, I think.
Yeah, and I think they make no bones about it when they say they put the customer first. They're not saying we put our merchants first. They're not saying we put our employees first. They're saying we put our customers first, and we do whatever it is to get the most value to our end customer.
Yeah.
And I think that's proven to be a working. And as I said about the pandemic being a catalyst, it's been the same for Amazon. They've just grown from strength to strength.
It's amazing they can grow so much. It's such a big company that's growing so much. But I see they're basically a monopoly, and monopolies over time offer a worse service. That's just what happens to monopolies. And I think that you've seen it, for example, something like Microsoft. When they actually started having when there's some because XP was dreadful and Windows Vista was dreadful, and now I'm sitting here using Windows 10 and it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is they actually had some competition. They actually had to start trying harder.
Yeah.
And I think with Amazon, they will. And that's what monopolies do.
I think Shopify claim to be arming the rebels, and I think they're doing a pretty good job. And there is definitely competition there for Amazon. I think my big worry, if I were a senior leader at Amazon, my big worry would be temptation. That they do so much now. They're not just a marketplace. They're not just a first party. Their Amazon Web Services is like the biggest thing in what they do, and like they've got all these different branches, and they own all these different companies and subsidiaries, and there's so much underneath them that there's always temptation to go a step too far, or to do something that's outside of your core competencies, or to do something that you're not actually good at. And like physical retail, they've got physical retail now. The Amazon Go stores where you just walk in, you pick something up, and you leave, and you don't have to ever talk to a cashier, because why would we need human interaction? And like that's a temptation, isn't it? They try to roll out 1 million of those stores worldwide. And
they generally the thing which I think is most impressive about Amazon is they come up with an idea, they trial it, they productize it, they do their own thing. So they have their own fulfillment houses, they get it working, they then productize it and they sell it to everyone else. And you see that again and again and again. They build a website, they productize it, they sell it as a third-party platform. And like Amazon Shipping, you can now, as a retailer, use Amazon Shipping to deliver your own things.
Yeah.
Admittedly, you get some random guy in a white van turn up and pick up your stuff, and it's a bit concerning. But they productize the process of delivery, and I'm sure that it's a massive threat to the likes of DPD. And in fact, you see the quality of DPD service going down because the price pressure to try and compete with people like Amazon.
Yeah, it's the shipping offering is really interesting, how disruptive it is, and how it impacts the relationships they have, because the FBA warehouses and the Amazon warehouse network that they've got, they can't afford to have that disrupted by deterioration of their partnership with whoever it is, UPS, DHL, whoever's delivering their parcels. They can't afford to let that crumble, but they at the same time want to be competitive to them.
But the thing I think which is in a way most impressive about Amazon is they're not afraid to kill the golden goose. So with like Tesco launched a marketplace a few years ago, and it failed, in my opinion, fundamentally because they didn't let third-party sellers compete against Tesco's. You could only list new products, you couldn't list Tesco products, and they made it very difficult to onboard. Whereas Amazon's like, anyone, you can argue about whether it's a level playing field or not, but they certainly let you compete against Amazon, which is very, very simple but very far-sighted. Because that's why they've got a marketplace that works, and Tesco's doesn't have one, and Sainsbury's doesn't have one, etc., etc. Because they weren't afraid to let people compete on a roughly level playing field.
Yeah, and I think the other element of what makes them so strong is the startup culture that still exists. At a multi-billion-pound market cap, whatever it is, trillion, there's still a startup culture there. It's Amazon Shipping, for example, is treated like a startup within a company.
Yeah,
it's its own little unit, its own little business with its own little kind of quasi CEO at the top, making all the CEO decisions for Amazon Shipping as its own little unit within the beast of Amazon. Able to operate autonomously, completely separate from that independent central control. They're able to make their own decisions and behave like a startup would, and do the startup things that get a business off the ground. I think that's what I found most I was able to visit the Amazon HQ in London. We had an event with Amazon Shipping about a year just before, back in the real world.
Back in the days when we could do things.
Yeah, where you could meet people face to face. And it was impressive, like going into this huge building with the security out the front who don't know any of the employees because there's so many thousands of them there that they don't know anyone who works there. So everyone has to have their own little security badge and stuff. But Amazon Shipping had their own little corner of it and their own little 100 employees, 150 employees, whatever it was at the time. And I think that's going to be what allows them to stay on top, is that they don't need to be broken up because they've already divided themselves up nicely.
Right, yeah. So look, I think we have been touching on this, but your predictions for e-commerce over the next few years, have you got any which we haven't? Who do you think is going to be big? Do you think anyone's going to take on Amazon?
I'm not sure. I think in areas of it, for sure, like Amazon Luxury, that the new kind of like luxury platform and thing that they're trying to do, obviously they're going to have a wealth of competition for that. And then I think we are going to see more consolidation at the top. You have seen huge groups like Boohoo coming along and buying up massive brands and getting all the customer data they could possibly ever want to get their hands on, and being able to make all kinds of crazy decisions off the back of it. So I think we'll definitely see more big things at the top. But Shopify clearly isn't going anywhere, and their competitors like BigCommerce really not going anywhere. So I think we're going to see more and more independent people getting online. And it being harder to do that in a viable way. It'll get easier and easier to start selling, and it'll become harder and harder to do it in a viable
to make any money.
Yeah, to get enough people's attention. That's what we've been competing for, isn't it? For however many decades that marketing has really been around, is trying to get people's attention and holding it. And that's going to just become harder and harder as the space gets more and more crowded. But yeah, I'd like to think omnichannel is going to be a big part of it. I think shipping from store and that kind of thing, having the physical store as a brand, not as a retailer selling other people's products, having your own physical brand D2C store, I think D2C is going to be the way forward. We don't need these lengthy supply chains that 30, 40 years ago would have been really, really popular. You don't need to have 10 steps along the journey of getting a product from manufacturer to the customer. D2C is just going to get bigger and bigger in my eyes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, anyway, final question then. What has inspired you recently?
What's inspired me? Yeah. I think people's resilience. I think it constantly inspires me. You see these I love those SAS programs you get on like Channel 4 and like chucking normal people into an SAS selection and see how they crumble. I love watching.
So you like watching I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and it inspires you to see people eating bugs and things like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I probably would avoid. I like normal people. I'm watching normal people crumble, not celebrities.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I like. I'm not sure if I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You like normal people getting abused is what you're saying.
I like seeing people push themselves, and I think that's what the pandemic has really done. Is it's put us all outside of our comfort zone, and it's shown. I think where we all thought our limitations were, we've been able to push past it. We've been able to deal with very uncomfortable conditions and still been able to keep things going. Businesses like Amazon still grow. People still buy their things. They still live. They still share nice moments and things online. I think that's been what's inspired me, is that I didn't think this lockdown I'd be as able to deal with it as we have been. We just kind of got on with it.
I didn't think we'd been able to do a year of basically lockdown. I thought we'd manage a few weeks and then everyone would give up.
Yeah, people would just people would just go back to it. Would just choose to go back to doing it again. So I find that inspiring. How much people have been able to kind of band together a bit and put the greater good ahead of their own personal desire, I suppose.
Okay.
What about yourself?
What about myself? What's inspired me recently? Do you know what? I've watched Ted Lasso on Apple Plus, which is a corny TV program about a US football, like American football coach who comes over to the UK, fish out of water kind of thing, and he manages a football team. But it's all about, he's the most positive character and he believes the best in everyone, and he's just all about getting people to believe themselves. And I was completely, I started off thinking it was really corny, and then I was totally overwhelmed by its optimism. It was the most inspiring thing I've pretty much ever watched, and it cheered me up more than anything since Groundhog Day. And I don't know, I'd recommend watching it. So
yeah.
In fact, I've got a thing on my wall saying, "Be like Ted." We all need to be more like Ted.
That's a bit, and what's fantastic is you get to live Groundhog Day every day now as well. You get to
it's true. Stephen, let's wrap it up. It's been great talking to you. Let's do this again in a few months' time. We'll find out how you've been getting on.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks a lot, Trevor.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Stop recording.